Isabella stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window on the 21st floor, her fingertips unconsciously brushing the wall of the champagne flute. Milan's night view spread out beneath her, neon lights flowing like melted gemstones. Behind her, the crystal chandelier cast tiny flecks of light, illuminating a patch of unclean dog feces on the living room floor. Sophia forgot to walk the dogs again, she said to the air, her voice so soft it was barely audible. The sourness of the champagne lingered on her tongue, mixing with the bitterness in her throat. Her phone screen lit up, and a message from Luca popped up. Asterisk won't be back tonight. Board meetings going all night. Asterisk she stared at the message for a long time, until the screen dimmed automatically. The same excuse, third time this week. Madam, shall I clean this up? Anna stood in the shadow of the hallway, a rag clenched in her hand. Isabella waved her off. Leave it. Wait for Sophia to take care of it when she gets back. She heard the sharpness in her own voice, like shards of glass scraping silk. The elevator pinged. Sophia walked in humming a tune, her perfume instantly filling the entire living room. Oh my God, what's that smell? She pinched her nose, carefully stepping over the stain in her high heels. Your dogs, Isabella said. Your promise. Sophia rolled her eyes. It's just forgetting to walk the dogs. Seriously, is that such a big deal? She kicked off her shoes, stepping barefoot onto the imported Italian carpet. Luca never had so many rules when he gave them to us. Isabella's fingers suddenly tightened, and the champagne flute let out a dangerous creak. That was my birthday gift, she said softly. Oh, please. Sophia grabbed a bottle of mineral water from the fridge. You know, Luca hates dogs the most. He bought them just to make you happy, like, she suddenly paused, her hand freezing mid-twist on the bottle cap. Like what? Isabella turned around. The crystal chandelier cast spiderweb-like shadows across her face. Sophia gave her that smile she hated most, the one that mixed pity with superiority. Like the diamond necklace he gave me last week. She deliberately pulled down her collar, the silver light glinting between her collarbones. He said, blue suits my eyes best. A wave of dizziness washed over Isabella. She recognized that necklace. Luca had said it was a gift for an important client. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering into countless pieces on the floor. You've had too much to drink, Sophia frowned. Anna, come clean this up. But Isabella had already walked toward the dog crate. Two Labradors bounded over joyfully, their tongues licking her calves. Good boys, she stroked the head of one. You're tired of this house too, aren't you? Sophia was sending a voice message to someone. Yeah, she's at it again. MHM, same old. Her fingers, painted with scarlet nail polish, tapped lightly on the screen. Isabella Munda pushed open the French window. Night wind rushed in, tossing her hair. She bent down to pick up the two dogs. Their weight made her stumble slightly. Have you lost your mind? Sophia finally looked up, her phone slipping onto the sofa. Put them down. Isabella stood by the window, Milan's night wind lifting the hem of her silk nightgown. She looked down at the warm bodies in her arms, recalling what Luca had said the day he gave her the dogs. They'll be loyal forever, unlike everything that needs throwing out has to go, she whispered, then let go. Sophia's scream was torn apart by the wind. In a lit window downstairs, retired Judge Mark was testing his new camera. The lens accidentally captured the figure with outstretched arms on the 21st floor balcony and the trajectory of two falling lives. Good heavens! Mark fumbled to adjust the focus, just in time to snap a shot of Isabella turning around. She was smiling, her lips moving as if she were saying something, but the wind swallowed the sound. At the edge of the frame, Sophia's scarlet nails were dialing a number. Isabella closed the window and picked up the dog leashes from the floor. Sophia's phone was still blaring with Luca's anxious voice. What happened? Sophia? Speak to me. Nothing, Isabella answered for her sister, neatly coiling the leashes. Just clean up some trash. She walked toward the bedroom, pausing for a moment as she passed Sophia. Tell him to remember to buy a new carpet tomorrow. Sophia's phone clattered onto the Persian rug, and Luca's voice kept pouring out. Sophia? What the hell is going on? Isabella bent down to pick up the phone, her fingertips brushing the fresh dog feces on the carpet. She stared at her soiled nails, then suddenly laughed. I said it was just throwing out some trash. Isabella. Luca's voice tensed sharply. What did you throw out? The birthday gift you gave me, she said softly into the receiver, her eyes fixed on Sophia's pale face. Both of them. A screech of brakes came from the other end of the line. Sophia suddenly lunged forward to grab the phone. Luca, don't listen to her nonsense. She's drunk. Isabella let her snatch the phone, then turned toward the wine cabinet. The crystal glass in her hand refracted distorted light. As vodka burned down her throat, she heard Sophia lower her voice. She's really gone crazy. She threw the dogs off the balcony. Say that again? Luca's roar exploded through the phone. Isabella swirled her glass. the alcohol making her fingertips tingle slightly. She watched as Sophia's scarlet-painted fingers gripped the phone tightly, her knuckles turning white. "I've had enough." Sophia suddenly turned to her, her voice trembling. "All these years you've pretended to be the perfect wife, but you were just a lunatic. Luca has long been." "What has he long been doing?" Isabella cut her off. "Has he long been sleeping with you? Or has he long been transferring all our joint assets?" She tilted her head. "Let me guess, those accounts opened in Geneva last month." Sophia's pupils contracted sharply. That reaction sent a surge of triumphant pleasure through Isabella's stomach, hotter than alcohol. "You." Sophia stepped back half a step. "How could you possibly know that?" Isabella slowly pulled a folded paper from the pocket of her nightgown and held it up to the light. The Swiss bank logo glinted on the page. "Because Luca's study key," she said softly, "has always been in my jewelry box." Sophia's breathing grew rapid, her chest heaving violently. She suddenly grabbed a vase from the coffee table and hurled it at Isabella. Isabella dodged sideways, and the porcelain shattered into pieces behind her. "Bitch!" Sophia screamed, lunging forward to scratch her face. Isabella caught a whiff of the familiar perfume on her, exactly the same as the scent on Luca's shirts. They grappled, crashing into the French window. The glass hummed under the impact. Isabella grabbed Sophia's hair, listening to her cry out in pain. "What the hell are you two doing?" Luca's voice suddenly exploded at the door. Isabella turned to see him standing in the entrance, his suit disheveled and his tie askew. His face was livid, his gaze shifting from the dog feces on the floor to the broken vase, finally settling on the document in her hand. Sophia took the chance to break free, sobbing as she threw herself into Luca's arms. "She's crazy. She threw the dogs off the balcony. Now she's trying to hurt us." Luca patted Sophia's back stiffly, but his eyes were fixed on Isabella. "Give that to me." Isabella slowly folded the document and slipped it back into her pocket. "Come and get it." Luca pushed Sophia aside and strode over, a strange perfume scent clinging to him. Isabella suddenly remembered the silk scarf that hadn't belonged to her in his suitcase when he'd said he was going on a business trip to London last month. "You think this is over?" Luca lowered his voice, his fingers digging into her wrist. "Give me the document, or what?" Isabella looked up at him, her vision blurred by alcohol. "Throw me off the balcony too?" Luca's expression froze. Sophia sucked in a sharp breath behind him. Night wind suddenly slipped through the slightly open window, fluttering the hem of Isabella's nightgown. She looked at the vein throbbing on Luca's forehead, suddenly feeling a wave of exhaustion. "You know," she said softly, "I met with a lawyer yesterday." Luca's fingers loosened slightly. "What lawyer?" Isabella stroked the edge of the document in her pocket. "The kind who handles inheritances." She watched Luca and Sophia exchange a glance, suddenly overcome with the urge to laugh. "Don't worry, it's not my inheritance." A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. All three froze. Sophia was the first to react, rushing to the window to look down. "Oh my God, someone called the police." Luca cursed violently, turning to head for the door. Isabella blocked his way. "What's the hurry?" She tilted her head. "Judge Marr probably got a clear shot. After all, it was me who threw the dogs." "What the hell do you want?" Luca finally snapped, his voice shaking the crystal chandelier slightly. Isabella pulled out her phone from the other pocket. The screen showed a recording in progress. 47 minutes, she said softly. "Enough to prove a lot of things." Sophia suddenly let out a whimper, like a cat whose throat had been squeezed. Luca's face turned an awful grayish white under the chandelier. The doorbell rang just then, 3 sharp chimes, like a knife cutting through the tense air. Isabella watched as beads of sweat broke out on Luca's forehead, glinting like tiny sparks under the chandelier. "Police!" A deep male voice called from outside. Sophia's nails dug into Luca's arm. "What do we do?" "They'll see." Isabella adjusted the sash of her nightgown slowly. "See what?" "Just 2 dogs." As she walked toward the door, she deliberately stepped over the shards of porcelain, making a shrill, grinding sound. Luca suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Don't open it." "Why?" Isabella tilted her head. "Afraid they'll find something?" She could feel the cold sweat on his palm. The doorbell rang again, more urgently this time. Sophia began to tremble, her scarlet nails scraping white marks into the leather sofa. Isabella wrenched her hand free and pressed the door handle. 2 uniformed police officers stood in the hallway, followed by Mark in his nightgown, still holding his camera. "Ma'am, we received a report." The young officer's gaze drifted over her shoulder, stopping on the mess in the living room. Mark suddenly held up the camera. "That's her. The woman who threw the dogs off the balcony in the video." Isabella heard Sophia suck in a sharp breath. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Officer, those were my own dogs." "Someone has accused you of animal cruelty," the older officer frowned. "May we come in and take a look?" Lucas suddenly pushed past Isabella to the door, forcing a business smile. A misunderstanding. This is all just a misunderstanding. My wife has been under a lot of stress lately. Stress. Mark suddenly raised his voice. In the video, she was smiling when she threw the dogs off. Isabella noticed the vein in Luca's temple throbbing. She stepped aside to let the police in. Be my guest. Sophia huddled in the corner of the sofa, like a frightened rabbit. The young officer knelt down to check the dog crate. 2 Labradors? Once, Isabella said, taking a new glass from the wine cabinet. Would you like something to drink, officers? The older officer stared at her. You don't seem very upset. Upset? She swirled her glass. About 2 dogs that betrayed their owner? Lucas suddenly cut in. She's had too much to drink. The dogs fell off the balcony by accident. Mark waved the camera excitedly. I filmed the whole thing. She did it on purpose. May I see that? Isabella suddenly held out her hand. Mark stepped back instinctively, and the camera screen flashed past Luca's ashen face. The young officer was scrolling through his phone. Oh wow, the video's already trending. He turned the screen to his colleague. Under the hashtag mansion dog abuse, the number of shares was skyrocketing. Sophia suddenly screamed. People are digging up our info. Her trembling fingers swiped across the screen. They're saying Luca and I. Shut up. Luca snapped, but it was too late. The older officer's eyes sharpened. Isabella sipped her whiskey, the alcohol burning her throat. She watched as more sweat seeped from Luca's neck, his shirt collar growing damp. Anna had appeared in the hallway shadow at some point, still clutching the rag. The young officer turned to her. And you are? The maid, Anna said, staring at the floor. I don't know anything. Oh, she knows, Isabella chuckled. Like why Mr. Luca always takes a shower in the middle of the night. Luca spun around, a murderous glint in his eyes. Isabella met his gaze. What? Going to silence her? Like I did last time? Anna suddenly burst into tears. He gave me money, told me not to say I saw Miss Sophia coming out of the guest room in the middle of the night. Sophia grabbed a cushion and threw it at her. Bitch, you took the money. The older officer pulled out a notepad. It seems we need to have a detailed talk. Mark's camera was still rolling, the red light blinking. Isabella watched as Luca's fingers twitched at his sides, like a beast ready to pounce. Officer, she suddenly said, there's a shirt in my bedroom closet that smells like perfume. Not mine. Luca lunged at her, but the young officer held him back. Veins bulged on his forehead. You're asking for death. Isabella stepped calmly behind the police. See? A cornered dog will bite. Sophia suddenly rushed for the door, but Mark blocked her. She scratched at the old man's arm hysterically. Get out of my way. Let me leave. Everyone calm down, the older officer snapped. Now all of you come with me to the station for questioning. Isabella picked up her phone from the coffee table. The recording interface was still lit. Lucas stared at the red dot, his expression like someone whose throat had been squeezed. Oh, and one more thing, she said softly. Don't forget to bring your documents proving you transferred the assets. She pulled the paper from her nightgown pocket and waved it. I have plenty of copies. Sophia suddenly collapsed to the floor, her carefully styled curls tangled like weeds. Lucas' expression shifted from anger to fear, finally settling into a strange sort of calm. You'll regret this, he said, his voice quiet, but every word sounded like it was dipped in poison. Isabella tucked the document back in her pocket, her fingertips brushing another piece of paper, the divorce paper she'd picked up from her lawyer that morning. She suddenly remembered what the lawyer had said. These pieces of evidence are enough to make him leave with nothing. The siren wailed below, and more flashlights flickered outside the apartment. Isabella walked to the balcony, watching as reporters swarmed like sharks scenting blood. She turned back to look at Sophia, huddled on the floor, and Luca, standing frozen. She suddenly wondered what the headlines would say the next morning. The older officer was calling for backup, his walkie-talkie crackling with indistinct replies. Anna huddled in the corner, sobbing, still clutching the rag that had never been used. Isabella stroked the edge of the document in her nightgown pocket. The paper made a soft, rustling sound. It reminded her of the day Luca had given her the dogs, the sound of the 2 Labradors happily scratching at their crate. Ma'am, please come with us, the young officer said, holding out a coat. As she took it, she deliberately let her phone, still recording, slip from her pocket. The moment the screen shattered, a small icon indicating the recording was uploading to the cloud flashed briefly. The cracks on the phone screen spread like a spiderweb, and the progress bar for the recording upload flashed before Isabella's eyes. When the young officer bent down to pick up the phone, she noticed dust from Mark's camera on the cuff of his uniform. Did it break? The older officer frowned. Isabella pulled her nightgown collar closed. It's fine. I have a backup in the cloud. From the corner of her eye, she saw Luca's fingers twitch at his sides, strands of Sophia's hair still caught under his nails. As the police car pulled away from the apartment, flashlights battered the windows like rain. Sophia buried her face in Luca's shoulder. He patted her back stiffly, his suit collar smudged with her mascara. "Please sit separately," the older officer said, tapping the partition. Isabella stared at the neon lights flashing past the window, remembering the first pair of red-soled shoes Luca had bought her on this street 3 years ago. Back then, he'd said the red made her ankles look like a work of art. The fluorescent tube in the police station's interrogation room hummed. Isabella dipped her fingertip in the water from the disposable cup, drawing circles on the metal table. When the young officer pushed the door open, she was tearing her third tissue into pieces. "Your sister's lawyer's here," he said, handing her a new cup. "We'll need your cooperation to collect evidence on the balcony." Isabella suddenly laughed. "Did you find the dogs?" "Not the dogs." The officer avoided her gaze. "Your pearl earrings." She touched her bare earlobes. "The ones I wore this morning were fakes." The water stain on the table reflected a distorted light, much like Sophia's twisted face in the police car earlier. Through the one-way glass of the interrogation room, Luca was talking quietly to a man in an Armani suit. Isabella recognized him as Luca's corporate lawyer, the same man who had praised her tiramisu at last year's Christmas party. "Care to explain the scratch on Mr. Luca's neck?" the officer suddenly asked. Isabella crushed the paper cup in her hand. "Ask my manicurist." She held out her palm. Her nails were neatly trimmed and rounded. "Or ask the back of his mistress." A commotion broke out in the hallway. Through the slats of the blinds, she saw Sophia's lawyer holding up a tablet and shouting, "My client's social media accounts have been hacked." Luca spun around to glare at the interrogation room, his gaze sharp as a knife. Isabella held up the crumpled cup and a toast, suddenly curious to see the chat records he hadn't had time to delete from his phone. "Surveillance footage shows you were wearing a full set of jewelry when you were last seen." The officer flipped through his notes. "So why were fakes found in the gap of the balcony railing?" Isabella wiped the faint indentation of her wedding ring from her ring finger. Maybe the wind blew them off. She'd taken the ring off 3 years ago, but the mark lasted longer than her wedding vows. The older officer pushed the door open, holding an evidence bag. Inside, Isabella saw the cold glint of the earrings, exactly like the pair she grabbed that morning from her cheap jewelry box. Forensics found signs of pulling on the earrings. He set the evidence bag on the table. And a few strands of golden hair. Isabella twisted a lock of her chestnut hair around her finger. "My sister dyed her hair golden just yesterday." She remembered Sophia bragging that the hair dye was a gift from Luca, brought back from Paris, just like she'd brag about the blue diamond necklace. A dull thud came from the hallway. Through the crack in the door, she saw Luca staggering and grabbing the wall to steady himself. The knee of his suit pants was stained with coffee. His lawyer was muttering curses into his phone. "Miss Sophia's apartment is surrounded by reporters," the young officer whispered. Isabella suddenly stood up, and the sash of her nightgown knocked over the paper cup. The water spilled onto the floor, much like the unclean dog feces on the living room floor earlier. "I want to see my lawyer," she said. When her divorce lawyer arrived with the folder, Lucas suddenly broke free from the officers and lunged forward. Isabella caught a whiff of the perfume on his tie, the same scent Sophia had worn that day. "You set me up," he said, his voice hoarse. Tiny drops of blood oozed from the scratch on his neck. Isabella took the tablet from her lawyer. The screen showed screenshots of the viral video. In the footage Mark had taken, Sophia's scarlet nails were dialing a number, and a blurry half-figure loomed in the shadow of the balcony. "I'm more curious," she tapped the screen to zoom in on the image, "about what was said in that part drowned out by the wind." Lucas' pupils contracted sharply. His lawyer hurried forward. "My client needs medical attention." As Isabella watched them hurry away, she suddenly remembered the terrified look in one of the Labrador's eyes before it fell. She turned to her lawyer. "Did they finish collecting evidence from the balcony railing?" The lawyer opened the folder. One page had a photo of a cufflink. Isabella recognized it. It was the gift she'd given Luca for his 30th birthday, with a cursive L engraved on the inside. "We found it in the bushes downstairs." The lawyer lowered his voice. 3 types of DNA on it. Isabella traced the engraved mark on the cufflink in the photo, suddenly wondering if Luca was touching the scratch on his neck right now, just like she'd touched the empty dog crate that morning, still warm from the 2 Labradors' bodies. Mark sat in the police station's evidence room, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. He wiped the camera lens repeatedly, his fingertip brushing a dent on the side of the camera, the mark left by Sophia's struggle. "How do you export files on this damn thing?" he muttered, jabbing at the touchscreen. A young officer stuck his head in. "Need a hand?" Mark pulled his hand away. "I'll do it myself." He hated the pitying looks from these young guys, as if a retired judge should be left behind by technology. When the video played to the moment Isabella closed the window, Mark was about to turn it off when he suddenly heard faint voices mixed in with the wind. He sat up straight, cranking the volume to maximum. "Did you take my asset documents?" A woman's voice shrilled, like glass scraping. "You and her destroyed everything first," a man roared. Then came a dull thud of something hitting the railing, duller than the sound of the dogs falling. Mark's hands began to shake. He pressed pause, and the screen froze on the balcony shadow. A corner of a garment flashed by. "Officer," he yelled. "There's something new here." When the older officer rushed in, Mark was dabbing at his forehead with a tissue. The reflection of the camera screen showed his pale face. "Listen to this. It's right after the dogs fell." The officer put on evidence gloves and took the camera carefully. He listened to the clip 3 times, then grabbed his walkie-talkie. "Forensics. Re-examine the 21st floor balcony railing." In the adjacent interrogation room, Isabella heard the chaotic footsteps in the hallway. Her divorce lawyer was scrolling through his phone. The video's trending. All the comments are bashing Luca for cheating. "What a shame." She stroked her bare earlobes. "No one cares how the dogs died." The lawyer pushed a glass of water toward her. "The police are checking the marks on the railing." Isabella stared at the rippling reflection in the water, much like the way her mind had unraveled over the past few weeks. Through the one-way glass, she saw Luca's lawyer leaning in to whisper something to him. Luca's jaw tightened, and he slammed his fist on the table. "The surveillance footage confirms you were wearing real jewelry when you left the house this morning," the officer said, flipping through his notes. "So why were fakes found on the balcony?" Isabella thought of Luca grinding his teeth on the other side of the glass. "Do women need a reason to change their jewelry?" She suddenly laughed. "Just like men don't need a reason to change their mistresses." A dull thud came from the hallway. Through the crack in the door, she saw Anna collapse onto a bench, wailing, "I'm scared. Mr. Luca really went crazy that night." "Anna!" Luca's lawyer snapped, slamming his briefcase on the bench. Isabella twirled her car keys. There was a new USB drive on the keychain. It held the surveillance footage from Luca's study, showing him slipping documents into Sophia's bag the previous week. "Officer." The older officer pushed the door open. "We need to talk about the blood on the cufflink." She smiled and stood up, the hem of her silk shirt brushing the corner of the table. There was a faint scratch there, as if from something sharp. The officer's fingertip tapped the cufflink in the evidence bag. The clink of metal echoed sharply in the interrogation room. Ms. Anna changed her statement. He stared at Isabella. Said she heard Mr. Luca shout, "We can't let her go blabbing." Isabella smoothed the fold of her shirt cuff. Under the fabric was a fresh bandage she'd put on that morning. "Maids always know too much," she said softly. "Like which rooms have running water in the middle of the night." The young officer pushed the door open, holding a tablet. "Fiber test results from the balcony railing." He glanced at Isabella hesitantly. "They match Miss Sophia's nightgown." "What a pity." Isabella rotated the faint ring indentation on her finger. "That silk nightgown was my birthday gift to her." She remembered Sophia's fake embrace when she'd unwrapped it. The perfume had stung her eyes. The officer suddenly leaned forward. "Why didn't you stop it?" "Stop what?" Isabella touched her earlobes again. The earrings falling? Or Sophia falling? She pulled out her phone. The lock screen was a photo of the 2 Labradors. "Just like no one stopped my dog from falling." The lawyer suddenly stood up. "The police already have an arrest warrant. My client needs rest." As Isabella walked toward the door, she heard the forensics officer mutter, "Strange. We still haven't matched the 3rd type of DNA on the cufflink." She saw her own lips curl upward in the glass reflection. That smile was exactly the same as the one she'd worn when she threw the dogs off the balcony. At the end of the hallway, Anna was tucking something shiny into her prayer necklace. "What's that?" The officer suddenly grabbed Anna's wrist. The prayer necklace glinted in her fingers. The old maid trembled and opened her palm, and a pearl earring rolled onto the police station floor, glinting cheaply under the fluorescent lights. Isabella chuckled. "Looks like someone picked up my earring." She bent down to pick up the fake, deliberately scraping her nail across Anna's trembling hand. "If you wanted it that bad, you could have just asked." Anna's lips trembled like leaves in the wind. "Madam, that's enough." The officer snatched the earring and stuffed it into an evidence bag. "Ms. Monty, there have been large transfers from your account recently." Isabella smoothed her shirt cuff. "Asset protection, as my divorce lawyer suggested." She glimpsed Luca's lawyer furiously typing on his laptop through the glass. The screen showed the Swiss bank website. The young officer rushed in. Forensics confirmed it. The scratches on the balcony railing match Miss Sophia's nails perfectly. A hysterical scream erupted in the hallway. Luca had broken free from the officers and splashed coffee on his lawyer. There was a dark stain on the elbow of his suit, exactly where Sophia had grabbed him in her final moments. "The truth is simple." Isabella adjusted her collar, revealing a faint red mark on her collarbone. When Luca pushed Sophia off, this cufflink caught on the railing. The officer stared at her for a long time. "Why didn't you stop him?" Isabella looked at the one-way glass. "Why didn't anyone stop my dogs from dying?" She slid her phone back into her pocket. The lock screen photo of the Labradors flashed briefly. The lawyer suddenly pulled the officer aside. My client has cooperated with investigation for 8 hours. She needs to rest. As Isabella walked toward the door, she heard the forensics officer say, the third DNA on the cufflink. Could it be from a maid? Anna let out a whimper. Isabella's smile widened. She'd known Anna would try to sneak the earring, just like she'd known Luca would push Sophia when he realized the documents were gone. Outside the police station, the night wind lifted the hem of her shirt. Isabella felt the half bag of dog food in her pocket, suddenly remembering how one of the Labradors had loved chasing Sophia's skirt. The roar of a news helicopter came from a distance, its searchlight sweeping over the police station. She squinted in the harsh light, as if she could still see the two dogs' open mouths as they fell.